The primary use of SLT is to transfer data in real time from SAP or non-SAP source systems. So for example, you have SAP source system, which is, let's say the source system is ECC, and we have a non-SAP source system, which is, let's say it's a database, and the database is MS SQL. So SLT is used to transfer SAP landscape transformation is used to transfer data from SAP or from non-SAP systems to HANA in real time. So ECC or the SAP system can connect to SLT server using an RFC connection, remote function call. So it's a connection that is used between two ABAP systems to communicate to each other. And from non-SAP to SLT, the connection is the DB connection. It's the database connection. From SLT to HANA, it's a DB connection. So you can replicate tables from SAP or from non-SAP systems in real time using SAP SLT to HANA. So when discussing about SLT or when performing SLT role, so we have two aspects. One is the HANA admin. What an admin role has to perform, and the other one is the what an application consultant has to perform, that is we. So we are the part of the application consultant. So Mr. Shanmuka, you can ask questions. I'm going to answer at the end of the session because it's really disturbing. You've been sending like 20, just keeping question marks. So this is not good practice. Mr. Shanmuka, please let me, I just started the topic. Please try to understand. A lot of participants are there. So I'll answer all your questions at the end of the session, okay? Because I just started the topic I'm discussing here. All your questions will be answered at the end of the session. Shanmuka, please understand. Thank you so much. So one is HANA admin and the HANA application consultant. So there are two roles in SLT. One is HANA administrator and the second one is the HANA application consultant. So what is the role of HANA admin and what is the role of HANA application consultant? Let us try to see both these roles. So first, the HANA admin has to create an RFC connection between source system, that is an SAP system, to SLT server. First, he has to create an RFC connection. So this is the first step that a HANA admin has to do. He has to create an RFC between SAP and the SLT. So in this case, SLT server can be installed on the ECC, or it can be installed as a separate host. So when you have an SLT as a separate host or SAP is on the ECC, in both the cases we require an RFC connection. But in our system, when we are using SLT, you find SLT on the ECC side. Now SLT is an add-on on the ECC side. But when you're working on the real time, always SLT is on a separate host. You'll have SLT on the separate host. You'll not have on the ECC. The first step is he has to create an RFC connection. So once the RFC connection is created, so step number 1, he has to create an RFC. So step number 2, so once the RFC connection is created, he needs to create a configuration. So he needs to configure in the transaction code LTRC. So LTRC means Landscape Transformation Cockpit. It is the SLT Landscape Transformation Cockpit, and this is the UI where most of the operations of SLT are performed. For SLT there are two UIs. One is on the ABAP and the second one is on the HANA. On the HANA you see something called data provisioning at the quick launch. So you see here in the HANA you find, it's not moving again. So here you find at the data at the bottom here you find something called data provisioning. So at the data provisioning area, SLT is configured and you can use SLT from here. So SLT can be used either from LTRC transaction code or it can be used at HANA where you can click on the data provisioning area. So also at the configuration, we need to specify what is the source system. Whether the source system is an SAP source system or whether it is a non-SAP source system. And we need to specify what is the target system. Target system in this case is HANA. It can be BW. It can be another ECC system. So a target system can be HANA or BW or ECC. So you can move from SAP or non-SAP systems in real time to HANA, BW or any other ECC system. The next thing that we have to specify in the configuration is the number of jobs. The number of jobs that will be used to transfer data. Now for example, let's say you have 4 tables. You have 4 tables on the source system on the ECC side. Let's say some example tables like VBAK, VBAP, BSEG or CE1XXXX. So if you have 4 tables on the ECC, if you want to transfer the data from these 4 tables to HANA in real time, then you require 1 job. So approximately 1 job can handle 4 tables to transfer data in real time. So one job requires 0.5 CPU. For example, let's say you have 16 tables. So based on the requirement from the client, you have 16 tables that you need to replicate. So how do we calculate now? We require 4 jobs and so what is the capacity of the server? We require 2 CPU or 2 core CPU. So simply to say, each job can handle 4 tables and 1 job requires 0.5 CPU. So according to the number of tables that you would like to replicate, now this is based on the incoming requirement. So that many number of jobs that we are going to use here. So for 16 tables we require 4 jobs. And also we need to specify, so these are the jobs that will be running. Always these jobs are active. The status of the jobs are always active to transfer data from source system to target system. You also have something called initial load jobs. Now, initial load jobs are the jobs that are used to transfer data using full load. It means that, so these four jobs are known as replication jobs, and these jobs are known as initial jobs. So what is the difference between a replication job and an initial job? So initial job means, let's say in the VBAK table, you have around, say, 1 million records. Now for the first time, when you move the table from ECC to HANA, for the first time when you move this table, first it creates the container, that is nothing but the structure of the table. And the second is it has to move the entire 1 million records from the source to target. So that is nothing but the initial load. Or in HANA we call it as load. In HANA we call it as load. Load means to transfer the entire contents of the source table to target. So when you do load, I think my voice is breaking again. So is this okay now? Hope this is okay now. Okay. So whenever you do a load, so when you perform a load operation, for the first time it creates table, it transfers the entire contents of the table from SAP to HANA. And from the second time onwards, from second time, what it does is it does something called replicate. Load means one time load, transfers the entire content of base table to HANA, and replicate is continuously monitoring of changes to the table, any inserts, updates, or deletes that happens on the base table. It continuously monitors and only transfers those records to HANA. So when the admin is configuring the connection, when he's doing a configuration between SAP system and an SLT, the first thing he has to create an RFC. Second is he goes to a transaction code LTRC, which is on the ECC. He has to specify what is the source system, what target system is going to connect, how many number of jobs, this is based on table, and how many initial jobs. So initial load jobs will basically transfer the entire contents of the table to HANA only one time. So the status will be load executed. The status of the job will be load executed. So from the next time, once the load is executed, then it will start to replicate. So replicate means from there onwards, any new sales orders are created or any changes made to the sales order or any deleted sales orders, all this will be updated to HANA system. So then he has to specify these jobs. So once he specifies the configuration, also you can schedule the data in real time. You have an option to schedule in real time, or you can use schedule process or the batch process. Batch means you can specify the time. Okay, daily at 8 a.m. I need to load the entire contents of the source to target. So either you can use real time or in batch process. So once the configuration is created, once the configuration is created, now where this configuration is created? On the SLT server in the transaction code LTRC. So once the config, and let's say the name of the config is ECC SLT. Let's say the name of the configuration is ECC SLT. So whatever you specify the configuration name, with the same name, a schema is created in HANA. With the same name, a schema is created in HANA, and under the schema, all the tables will be replicated that SLT replicates from the source system. So once a configuration is created with the same name, automatically a schema is created in HANA. And under this, all the tables are replicated. Now also if we notice, once the configuration is created, now this is the second step. In the third step, once the configuration is successfully created, in the next step, there are standard tables that are replicated by SAP, SLT. These tables, there are three tables. One is DD02L, the second one is DD02T, and the third one is DD08L. So these are the three tables that are replicated. DD02L will hold all the SAP related metadata. DD02T will hold all the text related to SAP tables, and DD08L will hold all the relationships between the tables. So these are all the standard SAP tables that will be replicated from ECC once the configuration is successfully created. So these tables are replicated under the schema for the first time. So once the configuration is done, the tables are replicated to HANA, and then the status of these tables, if you notice in HANA Studio at the data provisioning, you will have the status replicate in process. So you'll have the status of these three tables replicate in process. Now what is replicate in process? It means that any changes or any insert, update, deletes that happens on these tables, automatically the job that you configure here, the job will monitor and transfer all the changes to the target tables. So always the status of these three tables should be replicate in process. So once these three tables have replicate in process, and then the admin will hand over the system to the application consultant. So until here, all the activities are done by the HANA administrator to configure, to test, and to see that these three tables are replicated to HANA. So all these are standard steps. Now, as a SAP HANA application consultant, now what is our role over here? What is the role that we have to perform? So in here, our role is, now if you go to LTRC or at the HANA Studio, you find 4 options. It's 5. You find 5 options. One is load. The second one is replicate. The third option is stop load / replicate. And the fourth option is suspend, and fifth option is resume. So you have 5 options. One is load, second one replicate, third one stop load / replicate, suspend, and resume. Now what is load? Let us see difference between each option. So SLT stands for SAP Landscape Transformation, to transfer data in real time from SAP or from non-SAP. SLT can be installed on the source system or it can be installed as a separate host. The communication between ECC and SLT is RFC. From MS SQL to SLT, DB connection. SLT to HANA is a DB connection. Now, as a part of the role, there are 2 roles. One is HANA admin and application consultant. Admin, he creates an RFC at the transaction code SM59. So SM59 is the transaction code where he creates an RFC connection. So once this is completed and tested, he creates a config in LTRC. So once the configuration is completed, the tables like DD02L, 2T8L will be replicated to HANA and will have the status replicate in process. Then the system is handed over to HANA application consultant. HANA application consultant has to perform these 5 activities. And these 5 activities, the first one is load. Now what is the load does is, so what is the use of load? So when is the load option used? Load as an option is used when you have non-frequently data changing scenarios. It means that in a table where the data is not changing frequently, it means, let us take an example, T005T. So T005T is a table that holds country related information. We know that every day there is no new country created. So the data is not going to change on a daily basis. And these are master data tables. So whenever any changes to entries in the table, then we can use load. So whenever you use load, it means that, let's say we have a table with 10 entries. So when you use load, the table is created in HANA. The table with the 10 entries is created in HANA. And then if you make any changes to the 9th entry, or if you create 11th entry, these 2 changes will not be updated to HANA unless and until you perform load again. So load is only one time. So when you do load, it's only one time. The table on the ECC will be created in HANA, and all the entries that you have in the table will be created in HANA. Whatever the changes that you make, for example, you update 9th record, you update the net value of a sales document, it will not change in HANA. And if you create a new order, it's not going to change in HANA unless and until we perform replicate. So load means only one time, and load can be used for non-frequently changing data scenarios where data in the table is not going to change. So whenever there is a change, we need to execute manually, or you can schedule. You can execute manually or you can schedule this load. The second one is replicate. So when do we use replicate? So replicate is an option that is used. Replicate is an option that is used for frequently changing data scenarios. So whenever data changes frequently, then we can use replicate option. So how does replicate option function? Let us see that. Let us see how a replicate option functions. So when we use a replicate option, when we use a replicate option, so on the source system side, so this is on the source system, that is nothing on the ECC side. So on the source system side, let me complete drawing this diagram. So when we use a replicate option, so this is the source system side, means this is on the ECC system. So when we say source system here, this is the ECC system. So in ECC system, you have application tables. For example, like VBAK, MARA, KNA1, all these are application tables. From these application tables, so based on these application tables, DB triggers are created. So whenever we use a replicate option, now you see when using a load option, do you see anything like DB trigger or logging tables? Just that you find a table, we load the table from source to target. But when we use a replicate option, the replication option creates two additional objects like DB triggers and logging tables. Now, what is a DB trigger? A DB trigger is a small piece of procedural code that identifies any events that takes place on the database tables. So a DB trigger is nothing but, so DB trigger identifies any changes like any creation of new sales orders, or any updates to the base table, or any deletes that occur on the table. Everything is identified by DB trigger. These monitors for any events that takes place on the base table, and then the DB triggers forward these events to logging tables. Now, what is a logging table? A logging table is nothing but a queue table. Now, this is an area where the data can be temporarily halted, where you can halt data temporarily. You can pause data temporarily over here. So, in a situation where HANA system is not in a position to receive data. So let's say HANA system is down, it's not functioning, memory is not sufficient, or anything that happens to HANA, or you want to have a scheduled restart of HANA system. So when you want to have a scheduled restart, what you can do is you can temporarily halt data in the logging table. So DB trigger is nothing but a DB trigger identifies the changes. Any change that occur to the base table, like in inserts, updates, or deletes, and then forwards these changes to the logging tables. And logging table is a temporary area where you can halt data. If you don't want to halt, it moves data to the read modules. So read modules read data from logging tables, and via the RFC connection, read modules via the RFC connection send the data to structure mapping and transformation. So at the structure mapping and transformation, the data can be massaged or data can be transformed. If you have any business rules, you can apply at structure mapping and transformation. And then using the write module, the data is written via the DB connection. The data is written to the schema, and under schema table, and in this table the entries are inserted, updates, or deleted. Now this all occurs in real time. This all occurs in real time with a very minimum latency. So whenever you use an replicate option, DB triggers are created based on the application tables. DB triggers allow to monitor any changes to the base tables, and these changes are moved to the logging tables. Logging table is an area where the data is temporarily halted, or data can be continuously moved to the read modules. Read modules read data from logging tables via the RFC connection. It is passed on to structure mapping and transformation, where you can massage. Using write modules write data using the DB connection to schema in the HANA tables. And based on the tables, tables are at catalog. And these tables, we create information views at the content area. And these views access data from these tables or with many tables. So here you create a data foundation. So based on the data foundation, these information views process data on different engines. And then finally, these information views are exposed to the BOBI, Business Objects, Business Intelligence. This is the presentation area. You can have SAP or you can have non-SAP like Tableau, TIBCO Spotfire, IBM Cognos. You can use various tools to expose these information views, and the data in these reports are reflected real time. So in the base table, let's say you inserted 100. immediately in the report it will show 100. At the same time you change 1 as the same sales order 1 and 150. Immediately the change is triggered over here, so it will delete 100. So this all happens in real time. The change is transferred. But when you use load, when you use the load option, you'll have only 100. But when you change, immediately the change will not be reflected unless and until you do a load again, unless and until you perform the load operation again. One more point that we have to remember over here, whenever you use a replicate option, when you use a replicate option, for the first time, system does load. It means that, let's say you have 1000 records. All the 1000 records will be first written to the table, and then any changes to these 1000 records, any inserts or updates that you do on these 1000 records will then be reflected at the table level. That is by using replicate. So whenever you do a replicate option, whenever you use a replicate option, first the system does is load, and the status of the load will be executed. Means load is executed. So once the load is executed, then system automatically changes the status to replicate. And when it changes to replicate, then the status is now always in process of getting data from source to target. So that is the use of replicate option. So basically, if you see, for an application consultant, the first option is load. We use load for non-frequently changing data scenarios. Whenever the entries in the table does not change frequently, you use load. So load is only one-time load. All the entries will be transferred. Further, any changes done to the base table will not be reflected unless and until you do a load again. The second one is a replicate. In replicate, the changes are transferred using DB triggers. DB triggers identify the changes, pass on to logging table, read modules, read and transfers to SLT server. From SLT, data is transferred to HANA. And then the views are exposed to BOBI. And third option, you find stop load / replicate. Stop load / replicate is an option that we use when you want to stop permanently. So whenever you want to stop permanently, then you can use stop load / replicate. Now if you go back to HANA Studio, click on the data provisioning. Now please see the options that you have here: load, replicate, stop replicate, suspend, and resume. So this is on the data provisioning editor at the HANA Studio. The second one that you find, if you click on SAP Logon, put double click on the ECC. I think now system is working now. Some participant has been informed. He informed me. So if you go to the user, let's go to the ECC. Give the username and password and type in LTRC. Type in LTRC on the source system side. And this is the configuration. LTRC, LT Replication Server Cockpit. So once you specify the configuration, so I'll show you end to end, don't worry, I'll show you in the practical side. So today, I mean to say in today, we're only discussing, mainly focusing on the theoretical aspect. On the next class, we'll see end-to-end SLT, means right from creating the RFC, creating the configuration, how the admin does, and then replicating the tables based on each scenario. So all this we'll see. So 047 is nothing but the mass transfer ID. So mass transfer ID is an ID that is generated for every configuration that is created. So whenever you create a configuration, a unique mass transfer ID is generated by the system. So this is the mass transfer ID 047. When we execute this, so these are different tables that are being replicated: EKKO, EKPO, T001, VBAK. So here you see the logging tables, DB triggers. Okay, so main thing that I would like to show you here, when you click on the data provisioning, so here you see start load, replicate, stop load / replicate, suspend replication, and resume replication. So stop load / replicate, when you stop already replicated table, so what it does is it deletes DB triggers, it deletes logging tables. When a table is in replicate process, when you stop the table, it deletes DB triggers and deletes logging tables. It means that there is a disconnect between the base table and the target table. If you make any changes to the base table, it will not be reflected. So stop load / replicate will stop load or will stop the existing replicated tables. The other option that you find is suspend. Now what is suspend? Suspend is nothing but you want to temporarily halt data. Stop is permanent and suspend is like pause. When you suspend, whenever you do a suspend, the data is temporarily halted at the logging table. So when you do a suspend option, the data is temporarily halted at the logging table. So data is over here, the data is not updated to HANA. So that is suspend. Resume. Resume means again the data from logging table is read and updated to HANA, and the entries in the logging table are deleted. So in today's session, we were supposed to see the calculation views, but system is slow, so we started SLT topic. SLT stands for SAP Landscape Transformation, to move data in real time, to connect to SAP RFC, to connect to non-SAP DB connection. In SLT, you have two roles, admin and HANA consultant. Admin creates RFC, creates config. Based on the configuration, 3 tables are replicated, 2L, 2T, and 8L, successfully replicated to HANA. And the status of these tables always in replicate. An application consultant takes care of data transfer between SAP or non-SAP to HANA. There are 5 options: load, replicate, stop load / replicate, suspend, and resume. Load is only one time for non-frequently changing data. Replicate, continuously replication of data from source to target, frequently changing data scenarios. Stop, permanently stop the movement of data from source to target. Suspend, temporary halt of data in logging tables. Resume, again moves back data from logging tables to HANA. So this is on the theoretical side we have seen. In the next session, we will see practically from how configuration and how to move these tables and what is the difference between each option. Any questions now you may have, please Type in your questions. I will read your questions and answer your questions. Just let me read one by one. So is SLT is a separate system? SLT can be installed as a separate system or on the ECC. It depends on whether you're using for education purpose or for training or for productive environment. For production system, always it is separate host, but whenever you want to do training or whenever you would like to do some prototypes, you can install SLT directly on the source system side. So is SAP SLT used only in sidecar scenario? Yes, SLT can be only used in a sidecar scenario when you want to transfer data from one system to the other system. SLT can be used only for a sidecar scenario. So replicate, next question, is replicate something like delta? Yes, replicate is something like delta. Delta means newly created records or changed records that can be transferred to target. So in the example of 16 tables for needed 4 jobs, out of these, how many are initial jobs and how many will be replicate jobs? And what is the difference between, or what is the mapping between initial and replication jobs? So 16 tables, you require 4 jobs because one job can replicate 4 tables. And the half of replication jobs will be your load jobs. 50% of your replication jobs will be the load jobs. So next question, how does the load or initial load and how system gets to know this? So we have to do manually the load, we have to do manually, and whenever system does replicate, before it creates DB triggers and logging tables, system does load. What exactly happens when you resume is performed to the logging tables? That is the next question. The data from logging tables are deleted. See, for example, you see here on the screen, see there is a special naming convention for logging tables. It is /1CADMC /0000585. This is the special naming convention for logging tables. So these logging tables, one minute, let me get the questions. So can anyone ping hi or anything in the question box? I just missed the question here. Thank you. Okay, so the question was, what exactly happens when you resume is performed in a logging table. So when you resume, the data from logging tables are deleted. As a result of resume, all the entries in the logging tables are deleted and moved on to HANA. And from there onwards, any entries will not be logged, but finally the data is available in HANA. So will read module still read from logging table when suspended? No. Read module cannot read data from logging table when suspended because there is a disconnect between read module and logging table. For non-SAP connectivity, any default tables were created as an admin role. So especially for non-SAP, you find two things that are different. One is for a non-SAP, when you replicate data using a non-SAP scenario, the read modules on the SAP, it is on the ECC. The same read modules will be on SLT. So that is the only difference. Means that for a non-SAP, the read modules will not be created on the ECC or on the source system side. Read modules will be on SLT server. And the second difference, now instead of RFC connection, you find a DB connection. Instead of an RFC connection, you will find a DB connection. So that is the difference. Now coming to the next one. The question box. Okay. So if ECC is installed in HANA itself, just give me 1 minute, please. I'm sorry, there is some urgent call. So next thing is if ECC is installed in HANA itself, do we need SLT? No, we don't need SLT, but still there are use cases where you need SLT. For example, if you have ECC powered by HANA, then you would like to move data in real time from legacy systems, from non-SAP. In that case, again, you need SLT, even though ECC is powered by HANA. It means that you want to consolidate data from ECC and from non-SAP systems in real time, and you want to produce reports. So in that case, even ECC is powered by HANA. In such a scenario, when you want to move data from SAP or from non-SAP from different applications, then you need SLT server. So the next question, three default tables like DD02L, 2T, 8L, does HANA admin has to create a separate job for their replication? Not necessary, because each table will utilize, as I told you, one job can utilize three tables for four tables. So DD0, 2L, 2T, and 8L continuously being replicated. And the data is not frequently so changing. If you see in DD0, 2L, and 2T, data will not continuously change for every second or for every minute, because always there are no new tables created. So it uses an existing job to keep updating the records as and when necessary when there are changes in the base table. The next question, when data load in HANA, when data load in HANA, is there any table created by the system? The tables are created. There are system tables, there are application tables, both are created in HANA. So in case of suspend, DB triggers are active and only the logging tables halt. Yes, DB triggers are still active. In case of suspend, only when you do stop, DB triggers are deleted. Next question, where can we see the jobs involved in replication process? You can see the jobs involved in the replication process in transaction code SM37. SM37 is a transaction code where you can view tables. So how DB triggers come to know whether there are any changes that are happening means who will instruct DB triggers to monitor these changes on the application tables. DB triggers are nothing but procedural code. So these code basically monitors for any events that takes place on the database tables. So DB triggers are not part of the application server. They are the part of the database. And database is where, inside the database is where DB triggers are created. And DB triggers are responsible. And how DB triggers are created is when we execute the replication process on that particular table. So for every table, there is a separate DB trigger that is monitoring the tables. Is one-time load for master data only, not for transaction data loading? Yes, you can also use load even if it's a master or transaction data. But if you see, most of the time, master data is the data that usually does not change very frequently when you compare with transaction data. But using load, you can load both these tables. Both the tables are loaded. When will we use stop load replicate option? So we use stop load. We use stop load / replicate option. When you want to see stop load / replicate means load you want to stop permanently, replicate, when already there's a table that is replicating. For example, let's say there is a change in a scenario where you don't require that table, where you don't require a table, you require a different table. In that case, what you can do, when you want to change from one table to a different table, obviously you need to stop and you need to trigger a different table. So replicate, stop replicate means permanent stopping of these tables. So what happens after the SLT replication is over? So replication is not always over, it is a continuous process. If you see, replication is a continuous process of replicating data. So next question. When the data is loaded in HANA, is there any table created in the system? Where can we see the jobs involved in replication process? And what happens after the SLT replication is over? After the SLT replication is over, the status of the job is always in progress. The second question, where can we see the jobs in SM37? So when data loaded in HANA, the system tables are created that are existing in the schema that is created by the SLT.